My name is Daniel Pryor, I'm 30 years old and I'm an MBA student at London Business School. I don't think any of the leaders of the main campaigns are great campaigners, and I think for the simple reason that there's not a huge amount of trust in the general public in them. They believe that their motivations on the campaign are too tied up in their own personal political fortunes. And so I actually think that the best campaigners are those out there in the street who are meeting with fellow voters one-on-one and talking through the arguments that way. I think that the amount of trust that can be built up just in a small conversation like that far outweighs the amount of faith that an individual voter might have in, say, Boris Johnson on one hand or David Cameron on the other hand. To be honest with you, I think as far as the main campaign goes, it is going to be those who shout loudest. There's simply so much media attention around this. There's so many headlines, attention-grabbing headlines that are being pushed forward, that it's really, really difficult to get down into the individual detail of what's actually going to happen. I think that the truths and mistruths and the half-truths are so obfuscated by the nature of the campaign that really only by shouting loudest are the campaigns ever able to really cut through anything. I think it's been really disappointing that there's not been more room for nuanced debate in this campaign so far. But I think on balance, of both camps, I think it's Bremain who've tried to make the more nuanced arguments. And I think that the Leave voters, the Leave campaign, have really pushed some pretty clearly false statements. You know, clearly the 350 million on the side of their bus is manifestly false and has been said so by a number of people. Ultimately, I think when people go to the polls, they do vote with their heart. I think when they go into the polling booth, in the quiet of the polling booth, I think they just vote with what comes to them, what sort of stuck onto them. And I don't think there's been necessarily a really deep just understanding and thought about the arguments on either side. For me, the best argument is simply that Britain's future prosperity and health is dependent on being part of the EU. The problems that we face as a nation, not only economically but also in terms of the environmental future, technological future, are all best dealt with through supranational organisations. You know, clearly environmental problems don't respect borders. You know, corporations that span multi-continents and multi-countries are not tied to one jurisdiction alone. And that means really that we have to ally ourselves with these larger organisations in order to deal with these things, to break them down and make them understandable and to really solve them. So I don't only think that to leave the EU is a leap in the dark. I think it's a guarantee that we will decouple ourselves from these processes that help us, and that, for me, is a clear pathway towards lower prosperity and a less bright future for Britain. The worst argument for leave is this crazy concept that we're going to be able to renegotiate these trade deals with other countries. You know, we've heard time and time again from my international partners that they're not interested in bilateral trade deals. They take up a colossal amount of time, effort and energy on the part of the civil servants, and they'd much rather negotiate with blocs in order to tie off a large amount of industry in one go. So the idea that the Leave campaigns are pushing that somehow we can talk to all of these individuals and get all these treaties signed really quickly is just crazy. And I think even the ones that we were able to do would take so long and consume so much of our own energy that we would guarantee years and years of lower prosperity and lower economic growth for the country. I think of that there's no doubt, and I think that the idea that the Leave campaign has been pushing this is simply not true. I predict we'll stay in. I think it's going to be tight. I think the polls have been tight all along. But I think that ultimately, when people see not only the peace and prosperity that Europe's had over the last 50 years, but I think also sees the amount of economic benefit that the country gets from being able to work very, very easily with our European partners. And furthermore, that, you know, the opportunities that it offers every individual citizen, you know, to travel, to work abroad, to move abroad really, really easily. You know, I think that those benefits will outweigh the scare tactics of the Leave campaigners, and so ultimately I think we will vote to stay in the EU. I think younger voters are more likely to vote in. I think that they see the opportunities from the EU better, and I think that they're not quite so tied up with a lot of the old history of our relationship with Europe that some of the other campaigners have. You know, I think for a lot of the members of the right-hand side of the Tory party, you know, this is actually this has been a campaign that's been running for years and years. They've been desperate to leave and have slightly lost sight of what really they're fighting for almost. Of course I will. I think it's absolutely vital. This is a huge moment for Britain and for our democracy and for our country, and I think it's absolutely my duty to vote. Will my friends vote? Well, I hope so. I think there are some who, may think it's less important or may not get round to it, but I've certainly been encouraging all of them whenever I can to vote and make sure they're registered in time.